Okay, it should be recording now, and we'll get onward with the presentation. So first off, who's Helix? Why are we here? Kind of what's happening. If you haven't heard from me before, I am the COO of Helix and co-founder alongside David Bodas. I'm sure you've been in contact with one of us or potentially one of our ambassadors at one of our Helix schools. So we're both seniors. I'm at U of I, he's at Michigan. And we realize that case competitions are pretty underutilized in general, just as a service for connecting students with HR employees. And so kind of throughout our time in university, we've been having experiences with these competitions and now are serving them to you guys, our fellow students. Next year, we'll hopefully take it on full time. Kind of depends on how investment goes, but things are looking up, and we definitely appreciate your guys' attendance and participation because it makes this possible for us. A little bit of just experience from what I've had back in my day. Last summer, I was at EY as a technology consulting intern. The summer before that, I was a management consulting intern at Liberty Advisor Group. And then I was also a project management intern at CA Strata, which is a general contracting firm. Please feel free. Obviously, we don't have that large of an audience this time around. Please feel free to contact me with any questions you have about any of those opportunities, anything we're discussing in the case, or just anything in general regarding career path. Yeah, just what you want to do. We're here as a service and we want to help you guys progress and get where you want to be. So there's also my email on the side there and David's as well. If you do have any issues with the case competition, you can always email us there. I sent one out earlier today and you guys should have it at this point, but there it is if you need it. So first off, kind of already had you guys say stuff in the chat. If you haven't already, please go and put your name and where you're from in there. Just is kind of cool to see where everyone's from. I know we're spread across a bunch of different schools. Just for your guys' knowledge, we've reached out to schools all across these different states that are highlighted. So I think we're Illinois, Indiana, Iowa. We got Mizzou, UGA that was mentioned. UMich is obviously a huge one for us. That's where David's from and where Helix was founded. And we've got quite the display of teams. So welcome to all of you. And once again, if you want to say hi in the chat or speak up, feel free. And I think my favorite name, just for the record, is probably Goon Platoon. So I'm looking forward to seeing how you guys spin out in this competition. So a little bit about the competition, just before we get into the actual RFP and the other information going forward. If you haven't already understood this information, this is just kind of going to be a repeat. But teams are 2 to 4. So you should have applied with at least one other person on the helixcases.com website. I think you can sign up individually, but we'll be looking and checking to make sure you actually have more than one teammate. This is just to level the playing field a bit and also get you guys to work together, to collaborate, do teamwork, and kind of lean on each other. Everyone has different expertises, whether that's major or just background. And we hope that you can kind of lean on your team to support you as you go through the case. The case is going to be 2 rounds. The first is going to be this RFP first round, and it's going to ask for a document response. So as attached with the earlier email, there's a couple big questions, fairly vague, fairly general about the home appliances industry. We want you to explore those a little bit, be very creative, and hear your responses to that. And they'll be formatted into a document. So I'll cover that in a sec. As well, on the earlier email, you should have received a template that basically shows you how to submit your answers. It's not that important, exactly the correct formatting. The most important thing is to make sure you're getting all your ideas out there and that it's summarized in a cohesive and intelligent way. And all the submissions are going to be taking place on the Helix Cases website. So there should be a little button where each of you can submit an answer document. The second round is going to be live presentations. This is going to be much more advanced, and it's the reason we have the first round is really to filter out any bad applicants and teams. I'm sure all of you are more than competent, but obviously we want the best of the best. So that's going to transition into live presentations with judges, guest judges from other companies. So I think on our last advertisement, we mentioned there was going to be some for Whirlpool, EY, and a couple others. You're not going to have the same judges for every single presentation, but each one will last about 30 minutes in total. It'll be 15 minutes of presentation and then Q&A and the actual feedback process. We'll talk about that a little more next time. Obviously, this is just the workshop for round one, so we'll focus on that one. Other details about the competition: the current prize pool is $1,500. That's going to be split across all of the winners. So the first place team will get $1 grand, and then 300 and 200 respectively. Ideally in the future, because we're a startup, we don't have a whole ton of capital to work with, but going forward, we would hope to increase that. And we definitely would appreciate you guys to come back. I mean, obviously, if you enjoy your experience, get some good networking opportunities, get some good professional development, and potentially win the money next time if you don't this time around. Also, competition is open to undergraduates and graduates. I think we have 100% undergrad attendance right now, so don't be too intimidated. Anyone who puts a decent amount of effort can win, and yeah, I mean, if you want it, you can get it. So a little more specific look. This was on one of the original advertisements as well, at the schedule for this very first round only. Yesterday, the RFP document should have been submitted on Helix cases. And if it wasn't, I believe I sent it to you all today. Once again, reach out if you didn't get it. But this week is go time. This is the whole first round. Everything's going to be completed through here. Next, 9/14, that's today. We're doing the workshop. Thanks for being here again. Just talking through the case and whatnot. 9/16, that's this Thursday. We're going to have a case support session. That's going to be, I would consider it like an office hours almost, making sure that you guys are on track with your responses and answers. If you have extra questions that you didn't get done through this workshop or whatever it may be, feel free to come then. It's basically going to be an open work session. David and I will sit on a call together, or at least one of us will be there and just answering questions and helping teams. Last, the only thing that's really mandatory throughout this process is the actual submission itself. You don't have to come to the office hours, and frankly, you don't really have to be here either. We just think it's beneficial for you all. But of course, you have to be on time with that last submission. Put your documents in before 11:59 p.m. Eastern time, and should be good to go. Once again, kind of covering back over the submission expectations for what's going to happen in this round. You're going to put in that 1 to 2 page document on Helix cases by the 17th. Answer each question as thoroughly as you can. I would estimate around a paragraph or two per. Once again, they are fairly vague and they allow for a lot of creativity. And that's the exactly what we want you to do with the cases, to take in whichever direction you want to, generate some good ideas, put them on paper and make them sound nice. So the emphasis this time around is definitely creativity. In the live presentation and that deck, we'll focus a lot more on specifics. We'll be using data points. We'll give you obviously the whole case competition, which will include many resources for you to use. Yep, I think that's pretty much it. As far as when you'll know whether or not you get to the next round, that'll be by September 19th. Frankly, everyone should make it unless you totally screw up somehow. I think everyone's more than capable. Again, we're not at max capacity for the amount of teams that we can have and the amount of judges that we have, which is in a way a good thing. That just means you guys will hopefully all get the opportunity to see the whole case and compete at the highest level. But feedback will come that weekend after the 17th. All right, so now look at the RFP overview. And does anyone have any questions before I keep going? Take that as a no. If everyone wants to pull up the RFP itself, so that document I sent earlier, I think now would be a good time to do so. And I'll just give you a couple minutes if you haven't read over it already. I copy and paste the whole thing, so if you can't pull it up, you can just view it here. And we'll overview it briefly and then get a little more in depth into each of the questions. So take your time.
Are you just talking about the what's on the screen right now?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, I think that should have been enough time. So the first thing I want to point out is a little mistake. The submission date on here says 9/16. Like I've said, it should be 9/17. Not a big deal, just gives you a little more time to submit. So that's all positive. So there's 4 main questions that we want to ask and visit throughout this first round of competition. The first one is investigating the market of home appliances. And this is going to be a little bit of a gap analysis and looking at the market as a whole, specifically comparing geographical regions. Like it mentions, Asian providers have emphasis in certain areas, and we want to see how we can remedy that here in the U.S. Or just other places abroad. Understanding the product is the next big topic, and understanding the companies themselves. Looking at industry trends, I would actually say, is probably the main emphasis. So looking at annual reports and documents, that's what a 10K is of these companies. A lot of them have very public documentation, trying to figure out what is happening overall in the home appliances industry, and where we can expose some weaknesses and take advantage of the market. Next is a customer study. So building out profiles for who are our target customers, not just who uses them, but who can buy them, who has the money and who hasn't spent money on it, just so we can, of course, get their money. And home appliances, if you don't know, that's an appliance in a home. So think refrigerators, laundry machines, dishwashers, even toasters, blenders, that sort of thing. So stuff you can use around the house, generally larger objects, but as described, Whirlpool and General Electric are really good examples that I think everyone should be familiar with. The last thing is developing new strategies to enter the market. This one is probably the most broad of all of them, but how can we innovate as a company? So this is going to be talking about product innovation, more specifically. Hopefully we'll see some interesting features, designs, just ideas that could come around, and look at some interesting trends. Maybe Gen Z and our young student population uses certain products more than others. I know one great example was like an air fryer. I think it's a new trend coming around everyone's using. So think about how the industry is evolving, and then once again, develop new ideas surrounding that. So a little more specifically, the first big question is market gap analysis. So geographically and otherwise, how can US-based home appliances capture more of the market and become better than what they are? If you're not familiar with what a market gap is, it's basically where people aren't being served. So the first little image down there describes a world where we don't have umbrellas, and some guy thinks of, hey, I'm gonna have a device that stops the rain. Now he gets to sell these umbrellas to everyone who's interested. So same thing, air fryers didn't exist way back when, or maybe they weren't popular, maybe people didn't know about it. Now you bring it to the market, bring it to people, and all of a sudden you have a ton of buyers. So where can we capture more of that? And I think that's, these two graphics are fairly simple, but show that idea pretty plainly. The next one, like I said, is industry research, and trying to understand trends in general about where the home appliances industry going. And you can take this kind of as broad or as specific as you want. I will say that because this is an RFP and it's only 1 to 2 page document, you're not going to be getting too heavy on the numbers themselves. That's going to be explored a little bit more in round 2. So we want your ideas and concepts, and we want them to be as fleshed out as they can, in writing. So it's not necessarily pointing out charts like this about refrigerators or water heaters, but describing them and where they're going to go. This can be anything from maybe COVID. How has COVID impacted the industry? Are more people at home now because of COVID? Maybe they're using home appliances even more. Maybe they're buying way more. Or conversely, in the future, because so many people are now staying at home, nobody will be buying them in a couple of years. So it's kind of how, whatever direction you guys want to take it, think of this at very large scale. So kind of at the world stage. And just as referenced in that little paragraph, you can also look at 10Ks, 10Qs, annual reports, things that point out where are these companies profitable? Where are they going? What are they focusing on? Things like that. So part 3 is a customer analysis and market sizing. So the first thing is identifying who are the people that we want to sell to. And as you guys are college students, it's a perfect opportunity to try and look around, compare yourselves to others, and establish different, I guess, sectors of student. Maybe you want to separate them by major. Maybe an engineer uses the refrigerator a lot more than a business student. I don't know. Or maybe sometimes freshmen are using microwaves less than a senior. So figure out kind of ways to divide the student population and create different sectors and who we should target. That's kind of what we're describing here. And the second part is eventually we want to describe that in large. Once again, this will be taking more, and we'll dive into this a little further in round 2, but understanding the TAM, SAM, and SOM, and look up those if you're not familiar with those terms. So we can put some numbers, even if they're a little vague or questionable behind it. The more numbers you can show, the more impressive generally you're going to be. Obviously, don't fake anything or make up a bunch of garbage, but use resources and try and justify whatever claims you're making. Part 4, this is probably the most generic of all of the questions, is product innovation. So using everything that you've learned and understood, all the concepts that you're kind of pushing throughout the market study, the industry study and customer study, where do these companies need to expand? And this little graphic here shows kind of all the different ways that a company or a product can be innovated. How is it structured and processed? Maybe there's something you can do differently in manufacturing. Maybe it has to do something with the brand and how you're marketing it to students. Is there a certain way you can make customer engagement higher? Maybe that's surveys or whatever it is. So figure out very broadly what are the best new strategies for home appliances. Any questions with any of these kind of major topics before we move on? We don't have too much left in the presentation, but wanted to check in.
Are these slides available on the website that you just went over?
Yeah, I will. So what I'll do is I'll export this to PDF and I'll attach this alongside the recording that I'm going to send to you guys, if that works.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? All right. Definitely don't be afraid to speak up. It's not a huge, busy meeting, so it's don't be intimidated by being surrounded by other students.
Hi, Calvin. I have
Hey,
a
Rebecca.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it says the time requirement is an hour, but I think from the slides, it looks like the expectation is a little higher. Could you clarify a little of that?
Yeah, for sure. So like I said, the expected document is 1 to 2 pages. It can be kind of as in-depth or not as in-depth as you want. And a lot of these ideas are going to resurface in the round 2, and that's going to be much more involved, just developing a whole presentation and then actually doing it, of course. So we just want general concepts and things. And I would think about answering these ideas. I think the first thing I would do personally would probably be looking up articles and news and those kinds of trends about the industry and then exploring it that way. And then just writing down whatever creative thoughts come to mind. It shouldn't be, you don't need to kill yourself with the amount of analysis or data behind it. Like I said, a lot of the numbers are going to be in the next portion. We kind of just want to more see what your thinking is. How would you approach this more than what actually are the answers? So depends how much time you have on your hands. Could be an hour if you're very efficient and write things down quickly. Could be 2, could be 3. Once again, kind of however, some people are going to put a crap ton of effort in, some people aren't. So just kind of have to figure out what's best for you. But we'll hopefully grade them as evenly as we can, given all those factors.
I've got a question. So you've said at some points that we should use numbers to back up assumptions. You said to look at 10Ks.
Yeah.
But then in other parts, you are saying you want us to approach it creatively and understand our
Yeah.
thought process, whereas a lot of the answers are strictly quantitative. And you want all of this done in a 1 to 2 page document. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, what would you like us to focus on?
Yeah, so a little bit of inconsistency there, and I apologize for that. I think I meant to say that more of the data and analytics is going to come in the next round 2, like I said. So for this time around, focus more on being creative and just the concepts overall. So creative ideas are going to win you this round. And the most important thing is getting to the next round, but a lot of this is just going to be background research, reading articles, kind of forming whatever initial thoughts you have about the case itself. So I don't want a lot of numbers. If you provide them, great, but that's not the expectation. All right. Anyway, does that help? Anyone else? So the next section is business writing, and I'm not gonna lie, I didn't come up with these 2 next slides. Well, I mean, I made them, but they're not my ideas. So the first one is the 10 C's of business writing. So keep these in mind when you are going about writing your documents. Once again, they are documents, they're not presentations, charts, graphs, that kind of thing. So be clear, concise, complete, considerate, correct, and the rest of them. I'm not gonna go through what each of them mean. I think you can kind of do that for yourself. If you haven't heard of the 10 C's of business writing before, I'd encourage you to look it up. It's just a small guide on how to write a little bit stronger. And we will look for professionalism generally throughout these documents. Obviously, they shouldn't have grammar typos or those kinds of things. They don't need to be perfect. They're not lab reports. It's not going to be inspecting down to the very last detail. Once again, numbers aren't that big of an issue. So it's more about what ideas you present and trying to do so in an effective way. And this is, I think, the last slide. There's also 4 types of business writing styles: instructional, informational, persuasive, and transactional. This RFP or the RFP response is going to be entirely persuasive. You're going to try and convince us that these are the right ideas that the industry should be looking for and how a business should evolve. So your goal, as the bottom states, is to convey information, give us your ideas, and then convince us briefly why they're the right way to go. And we'll judge that accordingly. All right, that should be all. Obviously, you can contact me with any questions you have. That's my email again. Anyone have any final thoughts before we let you go?
So the 1 page to 2 page document is due September 17th by 11:59, correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Calvin.
Yeah, of course. All right. Well, I appreciate all your guys' attendance. Yeah, I'm excited to see what everyone comes up with. I would emphasize that this is not a huge stressful commitment. Again, couple hours on the RFP is all you'll really need. We just want your creative ideas, and then that'll be fleshed out kind of in the next stages. So don't stress yourself out. And then also, because the competition isn't necessarily filled with teams, I think everyone should, as long as their ideas are valid, that we'll progress the next round and kind of see you guys keep it going. So don't stress out too much about this. This isn't supposed to be a giant project or anything. It should be more fun and developmental than anything. Yep. All right. Thank you guys. Let me stop this recording.